Welcome everyone to this month's Teamship Teaching. So super excited to have you here today. So we've got people across all the world today from Slovakia to Australia. So that's a great thing. So let me start by sharing my slides. So 20-minute teaching, this is just where I share with you some gems of wisdom that I hopefully are going to inspire you for this month. And I was prompted to do this one because I think most leaders that I meet, they're really brilliant at taking action, but we can often be, and particularly we're all ladies here on the call today, terrible at resting and recovery. We know how to push, but we often don't know how to pause. And it's a bit like the accelerators jam down. And whilst we know that this can get us short-term results, it's also why so many of us and our teams are running on fumes and ultimately burning out. But here's the truth. Force kills flow. Nature doesn't force growth, it flows. Nature finds a way round the boulders to keep moving. And that's why I love in this picture, we've got the picture of the running water through the stream and all the boulders. And water finds the way of least resistance. And it would be my hope that we can help you find that too. So nature doesn't force the growth, it flows. The tide doesn't rush, it has an ebb and a flow to it. The seasons don't hustle, and winter doesn't say to spring, I need to come directly after you. Everything has a logic and a rhythm to it, and yet everything gets done. So what I wanted to share with you today was some of my thoughts on stop forcing results, start flowing with the natural pulse of your business. And this particular information is part of a Leverage the Rhythm accelerator. It's part of my Unbridled Teamship roadmap, which is a really practical philosophy that I share with people on how to build a sustainable performance without burning out you or your people. So, quick question to start with. How well do you operate with the natural cadence of your business? Do you feel that you're out of step or in perfect stride? Because that's what we really need to be aware of. How do we harness the energy around us to work effectively? Because in the words of Lao Tzu, nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. So what I see has happened in the world today is that we've built this culture that rewards us being in constant motion, constantly doing stuff. But that constant motion isn't momentum, which is what we're striving for. It's exhaustion. And when we push without the pause, we burn through our energy, and we also burn through our team's trust, right? Because we overwork them. So what I wanted to share with you today were a few frameworks. And the first of what these is the three primary forms of flow. Because most of the time when we think about flow, some of you might be familiar with it. Flow, when you're in the zone, you're totally focused on what you're doing, time just flies by, and everything feels great. And there's been so much work on flow. And in fact, the work with the horses is something that I think can really help expedite us get into flow. But that's a conversation for another day. I'm not going down that rabbit warren right now. But when we think about flow, we often think about it being in terms of personal flow. How do we get ourselves working in the best way? But I'd also like to suggest that flow exists on two other levels, and that's a team level of flow and a systemic or an environmental level of flow. And when we manage to align these three types of energy together, our business moves effortlessly. We power up the creativity, we get clarity, and we get connection. And when we don't get these three forms of energy aligned within the business, we hit resistance, confusion, and burnout. So let's just delve into a little bit into each of these. So what is personal flow? So as I said, this is your energy, this is your clarity, your focus, your sense of purpose. When you know what matters and where your energy belongs, things feel light, easy, and inspired. And yet when we don't, we often get distracted, depleted, or reactive. And we create friction in our business, and that friction ripples through our team. So I think it's really important that as a leader, we really get clear on how to manage our own energy because this sets the tempo for everything else in the team. And I don't know about you, but I've often seen leaders that are quite frenetic, right? They're throwing their hands around. Everything is, oh God, everything is just manic. And this tends to happen when there's some crisis that goes on. Leaders go into this overdrive and it just drives people crazy. People don't know that this energy is, I often describe, a little bit like a sparkler. And given that it's bonfire night tonight, isn't it? This is a very appropriate analogy. That analogy of a sparkler going off when all the energy is going in loads and loads of different directions. And of course, when it does that, you can't connect with it. And the energy is so fragmented and scattered, it really confuses your team. They don't know where to go. And we also see that with the horses as well. If our energy is scattered, the horses get confused and don't know where to go. So, as a leader, we've really got to realize that our personal energy sets the tempo for everyone else. Because in the horse herd, the energy sinks to the lead horse, and it's the same in your team. So, let's talk a little bit about team flow. Team flow is a lot more of the collective rhythm. It's the sense that everyone knows what's going to happen next without over talking. It's this, we'll talk about it a little bit in a moment, but it's this energy, it's called entrainment, when everyone knows where everyone else is and everyone can move effortlessly together. And you see this, right, in elite sports teams or musical ensembles, where if you think about a relay team, for example, when they're in absolute flow, the handing over of the baton at each of the relay handover points is effortless. But when they're not in flow, that's when we get things like the baton being dropped. And in an orchestra, when everyone's in harmony, the right instruments just know to come in at the right time. But how do they know that? That's because the leader, the conductor, is telling them when to come in. So I'd like you to think about yourself when you're a leader as a bit like a conductor, and you're telling each different instrument or each different department when to come in and play and what to play. And so when trust and communication and this awareness align, the team moves as one. They move in harmony. But when they don't, the rhythm breaks and the energy scatters. And when this happens, when the flow breaks down, it is usually due to misalignment. It's due to these conflicting priorities, poor communication, and a lack of recovery time for our team members. And what about systemic flow? Systemic flow is the energy that runs through your structures. It's your meetings, your processes, your decision making. And when the systems are clunky or overloaded, the energy clogs up like a river that's blocked with debris. And no matter how great your people are, performance will stall. So you might want to ask yourself, where is the energy getting stuck in your business? What do you need to change? Because I think our role of a leader as well is to unblock everything. When you think about the analogy of the river that we were looking at before, if I was a leader, I think my role is to go in there and move those boulders out of the way that are stopping everything flowing in the best way. So as a leader, what systems, processes do you have operating in your business that are actually making it more difficult for your team to work? And we often have to ask the team what these are because we might not know. So be really open to engaging the team in candid conversation about what is working for them and what isn't, because often our team members have all the answers for us. They know how to help our business get into better flow if only we ask them, and they can help us clear these roadblocks. Because as we know, flow's not about doing more. It's about removing the friction that slows you down. So I'll say that again. Flow is not about doing more in your business, but it's about removing the friction that slows you and your team members down. When we're thinking about flow and our business, I want you to remember that your business is a living organism. We refer to business as corporate entities. The word corporate is from the Latin corpus, which means body. So I'd love you to think about your business as actual energy, an actual body that lives and moves. And every business is effectively an ecosystem, and it has its own rhythm, its pulse, its cadence, and it has a flow of the season. And it's ignoring that rhythm and flow that leads to the burnout, chaos, and lost creativity. So, what are the seasons in your business? Well, you've got the spring season, and this is when we're great at this is maybe where you're might even be where you're setting up business. This is about ideation and initiation. It's about planning and planting seeds and experimenting. And once we've started our business or a project could do on this level too, we then move into the summer season, which is all about acceleration and execution. This is pretty much full on energy, production, and performance. And then once we've gone through the summer season, our business moves into the autumn season, which is all about reflection and refinement. It's about reviewing and celebrating and integrating all the lessons that we've learned. And then finally, we move into this winter season, which is all about regeneration and renewal, which is the time for pause, rest, and restoring our energy. So our business goes through these seasons. It's effectively the business life cycle. A product goes through this life cycle. We go through this life cycle. Our energy goes through this life cycle. But the problem is a lot of us spend a lot of our time in that summer mode. We keep pushing for more, faster, and now. But, what we know from nature is if that we keep planting stuff and we don't give an opportunity for the soil to rest and recuperate, then next time the harvest isn't as great. And slowly over time, the harvest drops off. So I believe if we want to honor and create a sustainable performance, we've got to honor the rhythm of our business. So one question you might want to think about is, where is your business? What season is your business in right now? Is it in still the kind of startup spring season? Are you more in the execution phase? Or maybe you've moved a bit more into reflection refinement. You've had a business, you now need to pivot your business. You need to change it. You need to reinvent it to something else. Because performance requires recovery. And when I'm talking with a lot of leaders, we talk a lot about how do we get our business into momentum? Because ultimately, that's what we want in our business. We know that in our business, once we can get our business up and running, it uses a lot less time and energy, and we can get that momentum. But a lot of business leaders do things where they start some momentum, they stop it, and then they start again. And that uses a lot of energy. So I'd like you to think about it like this. If there's an aeroplane and it's on the runway and it's about to take off, they say that plane uses about 90% of its energy to actually get off the ground. That's incredible, isn't it? And I know that with projects. And if you think about it in your business, how many times when you start a project, it takes a lot of time and energy to get a project started. And then once it's going, our job is to keep that momentum and keep it moving forward. And I really love this graphic I put in here because I think this really sums up quite eloquently how a lot of leaders are dealing with running businesses. Because for a lot of us, we've got our foot to the metal. We think if we keep our foot on the accelerator, we'll keep that momentum going. It's no surprise that look at this. What happens? What happens to your heartbeat eventually? If you keep your foot on the accelerator all the time, your heartbeat flatlines and you pass away. So we've got to think about how do we bring in these peaks and troughs into our business so that we don't crash and we harness the rhythms of stuff around us. So I wanted to share with you here now something called the energy curve, which shows the natural rise and fall of energy in any living system. So that's you, your team, your business. And it shows how energy moves through 5 phases. So, first of all, you start with the drive, which is the initiation and the focus. Then you move to the peak, which is our high performance and output. Then we move into decline, which is energy depletion begins. This is the warning zone. Then we move to rest, reflection, and rebalancing in recovery phase. And then we move back to renewal, which is the integration, creativity, and regeneration to start again. And so this models the flow cycle that is documented by people like Stephen Kotler. But it's framed through this nature-based lens. So it's a bit like you see here, it's the inhale and exhale of your organizational energy. And what many teams that I work with get stuck in, moving between drive and decline, never really allowing for this recovery and renewal. And the recovery and renewal is so important because actually this is often when we get our best ideas. And actually, when we look at the flow cycle and how you get into flow, typically there's an area, a time of pushing, and then you step away. And it's when we step away from what we're trying to do that we get our brilliant ideas. And maybe some of you can recognize this. I don't know about you, but I get my best ideas when I'm in the shower or I'm out riding my horse. When I'm not thinking about what it is I wanted to do, that's when all of the ideas come in. That's when I've stepped away and I've spent some time to recover and renew and spent a moment to just step away from the busyness to get some perspective. And when I can get that perspective, things start to flow again. So if we just summarize this into a little table, we've got drive here, which is the energy rising. This is all about focus and excitement and pushing forward. And our leadership action right here is about channeling enthusiasm with clarity, setting intention and priority. Then we move to the peak state where the energy is really high and intense. And what we commonly see here are things like fast decisions, achievement, happiness, and confidence. And the leadership actions that we need here are how do we maintain momentum and celebrate wins without overextending. Then we move into the decline phase where the energy is beginning to wane. We get a bit of fatigue and tension, reactivity and loss of clarity. So this is the time when we need to pause, we need to notice signs of depletion and reduce the demands on our time. Then we move into recovery where we've got low energy, but we're beginning to rebalance. So then we've got the time for reflection, stillness, and rest. And I encourage you during this downtime to recharge and reconnect. Reconnect with your vision, your purpose, what you wanted to do, what you're trying to achieve. And then you can move back into the renewal phase where the energy is regenerating. We get creativity and insights and fresh ideas so that we can move back into the drive stage and make things work. So in the renewal stage, the leadership action is about inviting experimentation and curiosity and planning for the next cycle. So I love this picture. And I said earlier on, I talk a little bit about energy entrainment because I think it's such an important concept for us to understand. And the starlings here in this picture absolutely understand the importance of entrainment. And entrainment happens when each and every person, or in this case, bird, is aware of its role, its energy, and the environment and how they work together. All of these starlings fly together in these mass flocks, and yet they don't crash into each other. They all have that spatial awareness to know where everyone is and what everyone else is doing. And I think this is a model for modern leadership. That when we can get everything aligned and working together and everyone is aware of their role, their energy, and how that impacts in the environment, a business can really start operating as one unit and moving seamlessly forward. It's very fluid. And we see this happening in horse herds all the time. The horses are very aware of where everyone else is in the herd. And when danger arises, what happens is that the horse herds change leadership positions and the horse that sees the danger steps into the front. We see this happening in flocks of birds as well when they're flying. For example, the geese when they're migrating, they take different turns of leading. They know that leading, especially leading from the front, is a very tiring place to be. They take it in turns to lead from the front. And another, in the case of the geese, one of the geese moves to the front. The leader drops back, has a time to rest and relax and recover, and then they'll go back to the front again. And that's the whole concept of shared leadership that I often talk about. Shared leadership means we can share the energy, and then that makes it much more effective for all of us working together. So, I'd like to share as we're drawing this to a close 5 simple shifts to help you rebalance your team's energy. Because flow returns when we make small, consistent rhythm resets that align our people, priorities, and pace. So, you can't change everything overnight, but it's about rebalancing the rhythm. And the first way you could do that is by maybe conducting an energy flow audit and ask your team, where does our energy flow easily? Where do we get stuck, drained, or overwhelmed? And look for patterns. Maybe you've got too many meetings. Maybe the priorities are unclear. You might also want to consider simplifying the tempo within your business. And in my book, Unbridled Business, I talk quite a lot about this, but I think that there's a tempo to your week and there's also a tempo to different activities that you can do within your business. So something that you can do to simplify the tempo is have the same types of energy activities on the same day. So you might have a day for sales, which is one type of energy. You might have another day, which is more about your bookkeeping and your admin. That's a different type of energy you want to use. So I tend to have financial Fridays. So I tend to do all my accounts and a lot of my admin on my Friday. Monday tends to be my creation day, where I think about my social media posts for the week and I create content for the week. But it can be really helpful when we can create that rhythm to our week that really helps people know what's going on. You can also consider building micro recovery moments. These are when we do things with kind of no agenda. So we could encourage walking meetings, one of my most favorite things to do. We could have blocks of the time in the week where there are no meetings so that people can actually have some time to recover, maybe even digital detox hours. Small pauses can create massive clarity in our business. One of the things I really encourage all of my clients to do is make sure they take lunch every day, even if there's somebody who doesn't eat lunch, but take some time out for lunch, get out in nature and have a walk. The fourth idea that can help you shift and rebalance your team's energy is celebrate flow, not just output. So reward the behaviors that create flow. So collaboration, awareness, and energy alignment are not just the effort. And then number 5, let nature lead. Get your team outside, actually get out and experience the rhythm of nature and help that recalibrate your energy. Because you can't really restore your rhythm in a room full of artificial light. So those are some of the things you can do. And particularly for leaders, I'd like you to think about when you are renewing your energy, to think about how you renew your energy both in the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual planes. Because a lot of leaders, when they're getting burnt out, we tend to go, first of all, to physical exercise as a way to replenish our energy. But maybe it's not our physical energy that's depleted. Maybe it's our mental or emotional energy. Maybe we need to get out and spend more time with friends and family. Maybe we need to spend some more time meditating to slow the mind down. So within our body, we need to renew our energy in different phases. And these are the 4 different phases. And again, in my book, Unbridled Business, I talk a little bit about this. So I'd encourage you to stop fighting your business, start feeling it, figure out where you are in the rhythm, where you're pushing, where you should be pausing, and where you're waiting when it's time to move. And what I'd love you to think about today and this week is, what's your return on energy expended? Because we all like to think we can be superwoman, right? And have that kryptonite factor that makes us invincible. But the reality is, as far as I don't know, I certainly don't have it, and I'm not sure you do too. So really think about, what are you doing? What are you spending too much energy on? What are the tasks you're doing that don't serve you, that are getting you out of flow? And what can you do to get yourself more into flow? So, a final few next steps for you. You might want to take the Turbocharge Your Team assessment at businesshorsepower.com/quiz. And that's going to help you figure out which area of your business you need to focus on first. And when you do that, you'll get a complimentary ebook that helps you understand a bit more about your business. And then you're welcome to book yourself a Turbocharge Your Team complimentary audit, where we map your team's energy patterns for sustainable performance. So please do stay connected with me on LinkedIn, or feel free to listen to my podcast, which is Impactful Teamworks, which you can find on the website, businesshorsepower.com/podcast, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or other great places.